10 weeks before nuclear war between India and Pakistan erupts. Kashmir is in turmoil. For decades, tensions have simmered in the state, formed in the wake of Pakistan's 1947 formation. The country was created when Britain partitioned India, creating the Hindu-majority India and the Muslim-majority Pakistan that we know today. As part of that partitioning, the British created the Indian Independence Act, allowing the two regions of Kashmir and Jammu to decide which country they would accede. Kashmir's Maharaja eventually chose India on the condition that India would protect Kashmir from invading Pakistani herdsmen. The Indo-Pakistani War of 1947 to 1948 led to ongoing violence in Kashmir, where Islamic militants have consistently targeted minority Hindu population in the troubled region. India worsened the situation in 2019 when it appealed Article 370, an article that granted Kashmir a certain amount of autonomy, though the state still fell under Indian control. It had been the saving grace for decades in India's relationship with its Muslim-majority territory. With its right to create its own laws stripped away from it, Kashmir descends into infighting. The ragtag attacks by Muslim insurgents grow more organized, with those Islamic militias eventually reaching out to Pakistan for help. That help comes. For years prior to the repealing of Article 370, Pakistan had supported a trio of insurgent groups in Kashmir. Cato Institute says those groups are the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, and the Hizb-ul-Mujahideen. All are technically banned by Pakistan's government, but all receive support through militant sponsorship, often in secret, as Pakistan attempts to support its own sovereignty and national identity. In short, Kashmir's Islamic sects put their differences aside, both with each other and with Pakistan, to fight a greater threat: India. 8 weeks before nuclear war, Pakistan, under increasing pressure from Western governments, decides not to denounce its own involvement in Kashmir. Instead, it senses an opportunity and decides to declare all-out war instead. Why? China. Over the past decade, the military alliance between Pakistan and China has only grown deeper. The United States Institute of Peace, or USIP, points out that America's 2021 decision to withdraw its troops from Afghanistan only pushed the two closer, with the country's navies and armies repeatedly working together on joint training exercises. There is still friction. China and Pakistan aren't aligned ideologically, even if they are aligned militarily. But behind the scenes, USIP says China has become Pakistan's biggest provider of conventional weapons, on top of being a direct military partner. China's President Xi Jinping also senses an opportunity in the Kashmir conflict. With India's attention diverted, he could take advantage to establish Chinese supremacy at the Line of Actual Control, or LAC, a border that China has disputed with India for about as long as Pakistan has disputed the ownership of Kashmir. Working together with Pakistan's interim Prime Minister, Anwar-ul-Haq Kakar, Xi devises a plan: an attack on two fronts. While continuing to support militants in Kashmir, Pakistan invaded India from the west. China launches his own attack from the east, taking advantage of India's split focus to overrun the LAC and start its encroachment into Indian territory. Anwar is open to the plan. He believes that Pakistan's victory in war against India would cement his position, allowing him to move from interim to full-time prime minister. And if he can claim ownership of Kashmir in the bargain, he'll go down in legend as one of the greatest leaders Pakistan has ever known. With the support of China, he can turn increasing violence in Kashmir into a chance to expand Pakistan's geopolitical power. Together with Xi, he launches an attack, 7 weeks before nuclear war. The situation's already looking bleak for India. It sets about sinking Chinese tanker vessels, many carrying up to 2 million barrels of oil, to essentially warn China that it intends to cut the country off from valuable resources. But Xi Jinping continues with his strategy, sending ships into the waters east and south of India to swallow up the country's naval resources. Xi doesn't intend to win this battle. He's just creating more time for Pakistan to launch its own offensive. Opening a second front to the west, Pakistan begins to invade India by land while relying on the Chinese diversion to prevent India from attacking its ports, leaving Pakistani ships free to transport troops into India. But India has been preparing for the possibility of this two-front war for years. General Manoj Pandey, India's chief of the army staff, follows a plan created by his predecessor, M.M. Naravane. Pandey identifies a primary and secondary front in the war. China lands squarely in the secondary front territory. Despite Beijing's attempted incursions past the LAC, Pandey knows he can rely on difficult Himalayan terrain to slow down China's troops. He's also identified that the naval attacks China has launched are intended to be diversions, to deflect his attention from the threat that Pakistan poses. Pandey's primary front lies to the west of India. Knowing that India's military is stronger than Pakistan's in a straight fight, Global Firepower ranks India's military as the world's fourth strongest, with Pakistan coming in ninth. Pandey chooses to go on the offensive, attacking back against Pakistani invaders. His goal is simple: prevent any territorial loss. 4 weeks before nuclear war. Over the next week, Munir explains his plan. When it comes to nuclear capacity, India and Pakistan are nearly level. The Arms Control Association, or ACA, says that Pakistan has 170 nukes to India's 164, a difference so negligible that it has little impact. What it does have an impact in is that India has a no first-use policy, or an NFU policy. Despite some alarm about that policy in India, it's still very much in force. India's NFU says it will only use nuclear weapons in retaliation against another nation that launches nukes against it. Otherwise, they exist as a deterrent, with India preferring to rely on its conventional forces to fight its battles. The very forces currently winning the war against Pakistan. But Pakistan has no NFU policy, at least according to the Arms Control Center. It's one of the few nuclear powers that makes no guarantees about how or when it'll use its nuclear weapons, which gives Qatar an ace up its sleeve. He shouldn't mention nukes. He should make no threat of launching them against India. But he should covertly work to position Pakistan's nuclear weapons so that the country can launch an all-out assault on India, weakening it so much that Pakistan could counter India's counteroffensive and start to claim some territory of its own. Who knows, postulates Munir. Perhaps China will rejoin the war if we're successful. Qatar contemplates the plan. As caretaker prime minister, he's only been in office since August of 2023. A founding member of the Balochistan Awami Party, or BAP, his political experience is somewhat limited. He served as an independent senator for Balochistan between March 2018 and March 2024, with his previous experience tending toward being a spokesperson rather than a politician. Though keenly intelligent, Qatar is naive when it comes to war, relying on Munir to provide sound military advice. He knows that Pakistan is too far gone to try to arrange a ceasefire with India. With little recourse left, Qatar agrees with Munir. It's time to launch nuclear weapons, 3 weeks before nuclear war. Preparations are underway. The conflict, alongside Pakistan's inferior military capacity compared to India, has already nullified some of the potential strategies Pakistan could have employed to deploy a nuclear weapon. A launch from the sea is out of the question. Pakistan only has 8 submarines in its fleet, and none can launch ballistic missiles. Even if they were, India's navy is extremely active near Pakistan's coast, meaning there would be no chance to sneak a nuclear submarine through. Dropping bombs from the air is out of the question too. In this case, it's not due to a lack of equipment. The Nuclear Threat Initiative, or NTI, says that Pakistan has several F-16AB planes capable of dropping nuclear bombs, as well as Mirage 3 and Mirage 5 craft, both manufactured in France, that are capable of delivering nukes. However, India would see all those fighters coming. Its air force is mobile and supporting the troops that are fighting Pakistan on the ground. Any attempted attack using fighter jets or planes would be shot out of the sky before a nuke was ever dropped. The only option Pakistan has is the Shaheen-2 medium-range ballistic missile, or MRBM, a modified version of the Shaheen-1 that uses a 2-stage design. The missile is road mobile and capable of launching while carrying a single 1,543-pound payload that delivers a warhead up to 35 kilotons. That's around twice the power of the little boy that United States dropped on Hiroshima. Far from the most powerful nuclear weapon in the world, still it is enough to cause serious damage, especially if Pakistan can land several at once. Range could be a problem. The Shaheen-2 has a range between 932 and 1,242 miles. It's just about far enough to launch from Pakistan's Masroor Air Base, located just outside Karachi, where it's believed to have a nuclear weapon storage site. But even at the top of its range, the Shaheen-2 wouldn't be able to reach much farther than New Delhi, which is 680 miles from Karachi. Nevertheless, Munir plows forward. While he can't attack all of India with Pakistan's nukes, he could at least devastate its western front and prevent the country from further incursions into Pakistan. Munir would have been much happier if testing was completed on the Shaheen-3 and the Abadil missile, which could carry multiple warheads, but he can't trust either to achieve a reliable launch against India. The Shaheen-2 will have to do, supported by even shorter-range missiles like the Abdali, Nasr, and Gauri, 2 weeks before nuclear war. Distressing news filters into India's military headquarters in New Delhi. The country's fleet of radar imaging satellites, or RISAT, has expanded from 12 in 2019 to 16 by 2023. Though competing with China at the time, India benefits from this expansion by being able to spy on Pakistan, and the satellite images coming out of Masrur Air Base are worrying. Intense activity is seen, with glimpses of nuclear warheads being moved around the base, and it appears being transported away from the base using vans. General Pandey feels something is brewing. News also starts filtering in from the network of spies India has operating in Pakistan. Mentions of nuclear weapons are increasing, and though none of the spies claims to know for certain that Pakistan is preparing to launch, the information they can provide, combined with the satellite imagery, suggests that Pakistan is gearing up for launch. Pandey picks up the phone and calls Prime Minister Modi and India's President Draupadi Murmu, who holds the country's nuclear codes. India has to prepare for the worst. 1 week before nuclear war, India has been preparing. First on the agenda, defending as well as it can against Pakistan's impending nuclear strike. For that, General Pandey organizes the PAD and AAD systems. PAD, which stands for Pradyumna Ballistic Missile Interceptor, is designed to hit ballistic missiles traveling at altitudes between 31 and 49 miles, making them exo-atmospheric, and is launched from a Prithvi Defense Vehicle, or PDV, using solid propellants. Those vehicles are moved close to New Delhi, Pakistan's most likely target, and will be used to try to shoot down any Pakistani nukes that make it into the exo-atmospheric range. The AAD, or Ashwin Ballistic Missile Interceptor, covers low-altitude missile interception. It's designed to hit missiles traveling at altitudes below 18 miles and will be stationed at critical population centers within the Pakistani nuke range. That covers most of India's western borders, including New Delhi, and may guard some of India's nuclear forces. Pandey would like some more defensive options. INS Anvesh, the ship India designed to test seaborne ballistic missile defense, or BMD systems, is sent to the Arabian Sea. It won't be able to do much. Its defensive missiles are still in the testing stages, but it may be able to pick off a nuke or two to help out India's other missile defense systems. Pandey leans back in his chair. That's almost all he can do for India defensively. Still, he also has to accept the likelihood that many of Pakistan's missiles will get through these defenses, especially if Pakistan launches most or even all of its nukes at once. His final defensive act is to evacuate India's New Delhi military headquarters, moving it to Mumbai, likely out of range of Pakistan's nukes. New Delhi citizens are advised to either sequester themselves in one of the few nuclear bunkers that new apartment blocks have started offering, or to get out of the city as quickly as possible. Next up, preparing India's response to Pakistan's launch. Pandey places the deployment locations for India's 4 Prithvi-2 missile groups on alert, likely located in Banar, Bikaner, Jalandhar, and Jodhpur, all near the Pakistani border. Those missile groups have about 30 launchers that can fire the Prithvi-2 missile. It's a short-range missile, only capable of traveling 217 miles, but it's only 9 meters long and difficult to spot using satellites, giving India the option to attack Pakistan along its border with India. Following that, Pandey mobilizes India's Agni missile launchers. The jewel in that particular crown is the Agni-5, India's newest and most mobile intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM. Pandey knows Pakistan doesn't have a missile that can travel as far as the Agni-5. This road-mobile missile can be loaded and transported on 140-ton Transport Cum Tilting Vehicle 5s, or TCT-5s, and is already available at Hyderabad. All Pandey has to do is move them within their 3,106-mile range, and he can launch into Pakistan without worrying about those mobile missiles being attacked by Pakistan's Shaheen-2s. Finally, there are air and sea options. Pandey decides to forego strikes by air, at least initially. He's using Pakistan's Air Force to support India's ground troops, and he'd rather keep them as they are there to prevent a possible Pakistani air-based strike. But as for the strikes from the sea, India has 2 Arihant-class ballistic missile submarines, or SSBNs, of an intended fleet of 4. The other 2 are still under construction. Still, 2 nuclear submarines are better than the 0 Pakistan has. Those 2 subs will be stationed in the Arabian Sea, made safer for India now that its navy can focus on Pakistan instead of China, and primed to launch in retaliation to a Pakistani nuclear strike. Each of the 2 subs carries 12 Sagarika K-15 submarine-launched ballistic missiles, or SLBMs, capable of attacking targets within about 430 miles. They'll be used to devastate southern Pakistan, while the Agnis attack further inland and the Prithvi-2 missiles destroy targets along Pakistan's border with India. It's a 3-pronged attack strategy, with the potential to add attacks if necessary by air, and Pandey hopes it'll be enough of a deterrent to prevent a Pakistani launch. 24 hours before nuclear war. Pakistan has continued to lose ground to India. Interim Prime Minister Khakar sits in his office surrounded by advisors that include General Munir. They all know that a conventional war is lost now that China is no longer a factor. Pakistan faces immense international pressure to surrender, but that would only mean India gets to claim more territory across its border. That isn't an option. Khakar speaks with his advisors to ensure preparations for nuclear launch are complete. He receives confirmation. With the weight of his decision resting heavily on his shoulders, Khakar leaves the room to contemplate the future that he's creating. He decides to sleep before making the call. 10 hours before nuclear war. More bad news filters in for Khakar and his team. India's troops are fighting deeper into Pakistan and are closing in on Islamabad. Lahore is fighting bravely, but it's losing. Two of the country's most important cities are under threat, and Khakar has no other options. He approves the launch. 2 hours before nuclear war. Preparations in Pakistan are complete. Khakar knows that India probably anticipates the strike. He also has been informed of disturbing movements by his enemies. General Munir tells him that India has been preparing launch sites near the Pakistan border. He also informs Khakar that India has missile defense systems in place. A saturation attack is necessary to ensure some of Pakistan's nukes break through the defenses. That means launching nearly all of the 170 missiles Pakistan has stockpiled. Still, Khakar has approved a launch, and in the back of his mind he hopes the attack will prompt a ceasefire rather than retaliation. His political naivete will come back to bite him. 90 minutes before nuclear war. Pakistan's nuclear launch sites are mobilized. Like the United States, Pakistan uses permissive action links, or PALs, as nuclear failsafes. Those PALs require a code to be entered before any Pakistani nuclear weapons can be detonated. Those codes are prepared. All that's left is to launch. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, Pakistan also operates the standard two-man rule. Two separate people have to enter the codes or turn the keys to launch nuclear devices. Those men are in place. All they're waiting for are their orders. 20 minutes before nuclear war. The orders come down from Khakar. Launch. Codes are entered. Keys are turned. And over 100 nuclear missiles fly at supersonic or near supersonic speeds toward New Delhi and selected targets along Pakistan's border with India. 10 minutes before nuclear war. India's targeted missile defense systems are working overtime. They launch missiles to intercept the incoming wave from Pakistan, taking out over half of Pakistan's Shaheen-2 missiles before they even manage to make it to Indian territory. But that still leaves about 50 on their way. 5 minutes before nuclear war. With the Pakistani launch confirmed, Pandey speaks to President Murmu. India needs its nuclear codes now to launch a counterstrike. First use has been established, and India is now in a position to retaliate. Pandey informs Murmu that New Delhi is likely lost. Enough of Pakistan's missiles have made it through Indian defenses and will strike within minutes. Murmu contemplates her decision for a moment. She already knows what she is going to say, but she's struggling to comprehend the true gravity of the situation. Still unable to comprehend that Pakistan actually launched, when knowing that India has far superior and more flexible deployment options, she approves the use of India's nuclear codes. Within minutes, the orders filter through to India's submarines, missile silos, and the mobile launchers carrying its Agni-5 ICBMs. Launch. The first impact. Around 30 of Pakistan's nuclear missiles make it to New Delhi and the surrounding area, guided by the Chinese Baidu navigation system. They land each equipped with a 40-kiloton nuclear warhead, around twice the power of a little boy dropped on Hiroshima, and devastate the region. Though many of New Delhi's 33.8 million people evacuated, millions more are either stuck or unable to leave. Those who aren't engulfed in nuclear fireballs die as a result of powerful shockwaves, destroying their lungs and rupturing their eardrums. In Pakistan's military general headquarters, in Rawalpindi, just south of Islamabad, Khakar and Munir are talking. Their strike was a relative success. New Delhi is devastated. But Indian missiles are coming. Pakistan's Remote Sensing Satellite 1, or PRSS-1, satellites have detected multiple launches from near India's border, as well as the launch of 24 Sagarika missiles from 2 submarines stationed in the Arabian Sea. Agni-5s are likely as well. Those ICBMs can hit almost anywhere in Pakistan. The strike didn't convince India to negotiate a ceasefire. Khakar buries his head in his hands. He believes that Pakistan couldn't possibly allow India to win their war, but in launching the country's nuclear weapons, he's failed to anticipate India's nuclear superiority. What was meant to be his winning blow will be countered with an offensive so devastating it'll wipe Pakistan off the map. 10 minutes after nuclear war begins, the first Indian nuclear weapons land in Islamabad and Rawalpindi. They hit their targets perfectly thanks to their advanced control, guidance, and navigation systems. Pakistan's military general headquarters in Rawalpindi is obliterated, with all of those inside, and millions of casualties are reported. Further strikes launched at Karachi, destroying what remains of Pakistan's nuclear stockpile while decimating its launchers. Pakistan successfully started a nuclear war, but now it has no way of continuing. Its leadership has been decimated. All of its nuclear launch sites are engulfed in flames. 60 minutes after nuclear war begins, the mood is somber inside India's makeshift headquarters in Mumbai. Murmu, Modi, and Pandey have successfully countered Pakistan's nuclear launch with an attack so devastating it has wiped out almost the entire Pakistani command structure. The mission was a success, but at what cost? New Delhi has been destroyed, and India's border with Pakistan is filled with radiation. India's launches also sacrificed thousands of the country's own troops, which had bravely pushed Pakistani ground forces close to Islamabad and were caught in the blasts. Recovery will be long and arduous, but India can at least take solace in the fact that its launch of nuclear weapons shows the world that it won't be pushed around on the global stage. Any future threat from China will be fought through conventional means, with Pandey immediately working to shore up his defenses at the LAC to ensure Beijing doesn't decide to take advantage of India's weakened position. Indian ships are recalled from the Arabian Sea and into the Bay of Bengal, ensuring its navy can counter any future Chinese approach. Kashmir is now India's main focus, the catalyst for the entire conflict. With Pakistan destroyed, it can deploy troops to fight the militants inside the territory, who no longer can rely on support from Pakistan. The war is won. All that's left over the next few months and perhaps years is to take control of what remains of Pakistan while attempting to negotiate the diplomatic fallout that comes with being one of the few nations to have ever launched nuclear weapons. But what do you think? If India and Pakistan were to go to war, would a nuclear fight even be possible? Would Pakistan realize it's outmatched in this department and focus instead on conventional means? Tell us what you think in the comments, then check out India vs. China 2024 Military Army Comparison, or watch this video instead.